Welcome to session 6 of our series, Turning the World Upside Down. These introductory videos for our groups, we hope that they help you begin the conversation as you use the study guide into looking into the book of Acts and the early church. This is the 6th session, so we've already been in the first 20 chapters of the book of Acts. We've looked at how the early church had an uncommon vision, how they used the power of words, how they had to move outside of their comfort zone, how their comfort zone could become a danger zone. We looked at as they converted non-Jews, the Gentiles, and that pivot that it was. That also, I don't believe I noted this in an earlier session, sometimes we can look at Acts as it's focused on Peter, Acts 1 through 12, and then we see how it focuses on Paul's work in conversion and in spreading the good news of Jesus Christ. We looked at what is our reputation in the previous session as we looked at how the early church was known as those people who turned the world upside down. We talked about Paul's 3 missionary journeys, and today, with this session, we are going to focus on getting our story straight. And our story is our story of our conversion, of our interaction, about what we know about Jesus. In earlier chapters, we saw, when we focused on the power of words, how they talked about that they couldn't stop talking about what they had heard and seen about Jesus. And we see that in our stories, that our stories of how God is working and has worked and currently working and will continue to work in our lives, on the impact that Jesus has upon our lives. And the focus is on Paul's conversion story, because twice we are going to see Paul refer back to that story. He's going to tell that story as he explains why he is proclaiming the good news of Jesus Christ and the resurrection of Jesus. We see in Acts 21 that Paul returns to Jerusalem. He is received warmly by his brothers, by the believers, yet he is seized by the Jews. And so in Acts 22, we see him telling his story about his conversion. He spends 2 years in custody and he awaits a trial, and he ends up going before the governor, King Agrippa. And this is when we see him tell his story a second time, where we see in Acts 26, he tells the story of how he was transformed by Jesus. So what you will do in your groups during this session is you will look at the original conversion story of Paul in Acts 9. You will then look how he tells in Acts 22 when he's seized by the Jews, when he talks about his conversion to them. And then in Acts 26, as he tells his story again, as he tells it to King Agrippa. This is a model for us in how we respond. How do we tell our story? And the significance of our stories of Jesus at work in our lives. You know, as a group, you have a story about how Jesus is at work in your group. What's that story? Where did your group originate from? How did it originate? Has it been going on for decades or months or years? And how did Jesus work in that? And how is Jesus working in your group now? It's important as we think about having conversations with others, how we are witnesses, just like Peter and just like Paul and in the early church. They were witnesses to what Jesus had done. And because of their work, because of their following of Jesus, we, thousands of years later, get to tell the story about what Jesus has done and is doing in our lives. So, as you get your story straight, talk about the significance of Paul's conversion as we continue the story of watching the early church turn the world upside down. Enjoy your conversation.